back, everyone. Let's see. Today, so yesterday, if you guys did tune into yesterday's stream, we did a bunch of Voyager stuff. Namely, it was a venture gallery that was a little group shot that showed all of the playable classes in the game. And today, what we're gonna do is make one for the playable Sapients, which are the races. So I already did a bit of work on it yesterday. So what I'm picturing here is basically one giant group picture of all the playable Sapients, as well as the playable Sapients, and each one has like one of the characters representing them. Some of them will be some familiar faces on the venture list. So Pathfinder has something like this, where they have these characters called iconics, and iconics are basically original characters that they made that specifically represent that particular class. So whenever they have like illustrations or different cover images that show that class, is always the same character, which I like that idea. So we're kind of doing something similar here as well, where we have different characters that represent that particular sapient. So we're gonna do that here, and so this is gonna be a group picture, black and white, because it'll be completely insane for me to color all this. But we're gonna draw at least 13 to 15 different characters, so about like 8 here and 7 here, and possibly even some planned sapiens, which is going to be the robot sapient, which is already one that's been in demand for quite a while now, and possibly a slime race, because in terms of like possible monster girl type races, or just monster races in general, we're probably lacking like a slime type, and this is looking at. I was watching a stream on Dicey Queen D. She was streaming a read-through of the Cloudbreaker Alliance RPG, and one race that stood out to her and to me as well when I saw the stream was a slime race, and I looked at it, so that's a cool idea to have like a race of people based solely on slimes. But I might reflavor them to be maybe like an elemental race, because that's also kind of what we're missing, which is a kind of an elemental race, although we kind of have that already, because an Amarusan is technically a fire elemental type race, but in that case the slime would be kind of you could say it's like a water elemental. It's sort of the closest thing. So we're gonna go about doing that. So we're just basically doing basic sketches for all of these characters, so that I can just put them down on their poses down. I wanted to draw this guy next. He was the example guy for the Voyager, so I'm gonna draw him in the background. Initially I sketched out this dinosaur dude, which is also I sketched out this dinosaur dude, but I figured that I like the design of the snake guy more, so I'm gonna use him as like the iconic or the representative character for the Voyager. But of course, this dinosaur guy is clearly, you know, it shows the scope of how you can build your character, so that, you know, even like you can make dinosaur people or snake people if you choose a Voyager. But now I'm gonna use the snake guy instead. So he is a pretty tall guy, if I remember how to draw snakes again. Cobra actually. So I'm all lined up here. It's a bit big, I'll have to resize him later. It's gonna be a chill art stream basically, while I slowly sketch out and do the line art for all these characters. So if you guys have any questions or other stuff regarding like the Sapients, feel free to drop them here while I work. So since I'm already working on him now, I might as well do more detailed work on him. Spines on his head. That's back from a while. Let me Google him. I didn't know there was snake people in World of Warcraft. Huh, that is a strange resemblance, isn't it? Well, let's not think about that too hard. Something about his head shape's not quite the same. I think it's here. Something's not quite. Oh, okay, that's better. Right. Then, so based on his outfit, I would assume he's probably armature of some sort, because the knight, kind of knight type armor is wearing. I'll need to make you start putting different line art color for all of them, so it'll be easier to tell them apart. Thinking along the lines of him being like a mercenary or hired soldier, perhaps. Given the progress we're making, which is quite fast these past few days, and I've been quite surprised by the sort of reception that Voyager has been getting as well. There's been quite a lot of support for it from of different places that I can find, and it makes me think that I could possibly could or should commit to it more and try to like work on it even more on more streams and such, because the faster I can release it in a 1.0 state, then of course then production of Voyager will start going to full swing. So that's making me think. And it's a bit of a far off dream right now. I honestly don't think it will be the case, but I guess if there's enough good reception for it, Kickstarter is also an option for like funding it on a larger scale. There's even like, I guess, the possibility of actual printed books for it as well, but the logistics for that is way beyond my purview currently. But it is a possibility at least. I think his head needs to be bigger, or rather this needs to be smaller. Definitely something to consider as time goes on. Oh, I think I know what's wrong now. Move this down. Okay. Should not have drawn him with all of these accessories. Now I have to draw every single one. 5 points. just needs to be wider. What's my favorite sapient? Good question. In terms of sheer concept, I think I might like the Oshlati a lot, because just the combination of like these kind of like Slavic bird folk is something quite novel, sort of a novel combination I sort of stumbled on. So I think if I end up drawing more out of them and sort of their culture, and really end up being quite a unique fantasy race culture that would make Voyager stand out. Although I think in terms of like recognizability, I think the Phytosapiens are probably the most recognizable sapient in the game, because of Niwa and how she's sort of like the mascot of the game, and how just Phytosapiens in general are kind of the, I guess, the most story relevant sapient because of the world tree and all that. So they have like the most kind of impact on the world in general. But yeah, I think I would pick Doshlati. And I didn't do much about the Keen yet, but I'm quite a fan of the general lore as well that I wrote up for them. Just the general idea that Keen are made and not born, so they have to be created. Each new one has to be created by its community, and that makes them quite a mysterious race in general. Probably give him like a spear or something as a weapon. His face could be bigger. Chunkier. Seems quite bulky type. here for now. I wanted to finish up some others, so let's do Jidane. So let me pull up her reference. So Jidane, she has full body here. Okay. Resize this. Alright. Definitely take more than a few hours to finish all this, so probably won't finish all of them this session, but make decent progress, and I'll probably try to finish it off stream. And of course, for the other planned sapients that haven't actually appeared yet in the game, like the robot one, I'll need to figure out their stats and what traits to give them, of course according to their new version 0.5 system as well. Hey Floof, welcome to the stream. Just drawing a bunch of all the fantasy races for a little for Voyager here. So spaghetti. I'm pretty hungry too, but gonna eat after the stream. Just had a basic breakfast. So here's the head tie. So that'll go here. Gonna be in black and white, so I can probably afford to do stuff like more stark shadows, I think. So like this. So more of a manga style shading for. So for this I need quite like the designs for a lot of the established characters already, but the problem is I drew them with the fact in mind that they were going to be like single illustrations in a book. So normally, if it were up to me, I would never design characters this detailed if I was doing like a comic or something. Probably vastly simplify the designs and all that. Since now we're kind of at this stage, we kind of have to commit to the designs. I can't really simplify them that much. The thrusters could be bigger actually. As well. Be holding a flask here, but a gauntlet so big it might not actually be clear, but I think that kind of adds to it. big lady knight is gotta be one of my favorite genders. So that doesn't get lost among the rest of the line art. Done. Let's move on to Vesper. So let's just get this off now. Pull up my Vesper reference. Hey Kingsley, not sure if I've caught you on the streams before, but welcome to the streams, and welcome back Cole. Just basically doing one big spreadsheet of like all the playable races in this game. So I'm gonna adjust the sizes later, but right now we're just sort of drawing all of them at once. So now we're doing Vesper. So here, make it smaller. Vesper, Vesper. So she's kind of like the, I guess, the main protagonist, or at least the sort of main protagonist of the book or the setting. This is not correct. Hello Kuro, just arrived. What are all the different sapiens in the setting? Okay, so I have the list right here. So we have, let me change my, okay, so we have the ADN, and the ADN is basically, actually let me just pull up the, could probably just pull up the PDF itself. So the, where is it? So the screen, and then Scribus. So let me run through the races real quick, which is the ADN, which is basically the original human. Basically, they are the default vanilla human race in this setting. So that's kind of your go-to human race. So then, and they're kind of like the viewpoint sapien, because they were born, not born, but they were sort of like where your campaigns would mostly take place is sort of where all the human cities are, just as like the starting point. And then we have the Shardlander, which is another human race, but they're basically like sky Vikings. So there's like shards in the air, which are like these floating land masses and islands in the sky, and the Shardlanders are like these sort of Viking type people who take the lost technology from these shards and use them. So they're quite a different culture from the other regular humans. And then we have the Amarusan. The Amarusans are basically fire elemental cowboys, because they came from what used to be America, because the known world here takes place in around Europe. So the Amarusans came through colonies and caravans from Amarusa, which is formerly known as America, and they sort of evolved into like these sort of fire elemental people, which is let me see, this page is page 67. Page 67. And the Amarusan would be, if we look at the Gundrifter class, this is one of the Amarusan, this is the Amarusan representative, where it's just basically like you have skin and flesh made out of like this obsidian type material, and your hair and beard and all your other features are like fire, basically. So that's sort of the fire elemental race, the Amarusans. And then you have the Magoi, and the Magoi are basically the base Phytosapien, which is what Niwa is, which is just generally under the Phytosapien umbrella, which is basically plant people. And then we have, let's see, yeah, in D&D terms they would be like, the Amarusan would be like a fire genasi. And then next is the Xylolith. The Xylolith is another Phytosapien type, but they're basically like the big ant type people. So they have like really tough bark armor and leaves and stuff going out of them. So they are sort of like the guardian race, a guardian counterpart to the Mangoi, because the Mangoi are quite vulnerable and not as strong. So it's sort of speculated that the Xyloliths evolved as to sort of become their protectors. Next is the Kaibi, and the Kaibi are basically the furry race. There where you have the fox girls and cat girls. Any sort of mammalian creature is sort of where you would make a Kaibi. And then, so that would be kind of the D&D equivalent of like your Tabaxi, Leonid, those type races. Unless small plant people would be your pick, unless the Sapien out there with wings. There are, I will get to them. But next is the Raya, and like I've shown before, the Raya are like the reptile people. So the equivalent would be like Yuan Ti from D&D, or I guess Dragonborn, but there is an actual dragon race in this one. But closer would be like the Dragonborn that you would see in like Baldur's Gate, with actually more clear reptilian features, or like Argonians from the Elder Scrolls. But they also include amphibian and fish people as well, to an extent. So like frogs and toads, salamanders, but for this representative we have a snake man. Nagas as well sort of fall into this. So I wanted to sort of make sure each sapient type is relatively broad, so that anytime someone wanted to make a character idea that falls into a general fantasy race, they would be able to, using the sapiens here. Next is the Oshlati, which are the bird people, with a distinctive sort of Slavic flavor to them, so sort of like Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, that's sort of like their culture. And they do have wings, but not all of them can fly, so it depends on the individual. The next is the Siurai, and the Siurai are basically like the equivalent of the elves in this setting. So there aren't really like elves in this setting, but the closest equivalent are the Siurai, who are like sky elves, because they live in like the Shardlanders, they live in these land masses that float high above the sky, and they sort of evolved to have semi-hollow skeletons, meaning they have very light frames and they can almost float, because they sort of adapted to living really high up where the atmosphere is really thin, and they're very proficient in magic, so they're kind of like the elf equivalent. Next is the Drakian, and the Drakian is sort of a mix between, so they're dragon people essentially, but they're kind of a mix between your typical they're a bit closer to tieflings in terms of what they will look like, or what sort of reference you would use, because unlike the Raya, which have more clearly reptilian features, the Drakians are more humanoid in appearance, because their trait is that they're able to sort of interbreed with other species more effectively, so they're very commonly found throughout the world in terms of having mixed parentage, and they're kind of closer in terms of like a tiefling, or the aura from Final Fantasy XIV, which are also kind of these dragon horn people. So this Sierra is Estelle, which is another one of the main characters, and she is sort of like a lightning magic archer. That's sort of why she has the thing on her cape. And she sort of that's sort of going to a whole other thing, but that's like her culture is that she was raised in because the CRI culture is very isolationist because of how high they are and like separated there from everyone else, that they have sort of noble houses and that sort of culture around political intrigue and a lot of court type games, the sort of the flavor of that race. And the Drakians are more kind of like the versatile race that can be found anywhere, and there's several different types of Drakian based on the type of dragon they came from. So there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's currently 7 subtypes of Drakian. So you have like Earth Dragon, Steel Dragon, and that sort of determines kind of your disposition. Obviously you can change the personality as you want, but sort of your general disposition, as well as your horn and tail pattern, if you have any. So there's quite a few examples, but they're kind of basically the horn race, essentially. And then next would be the Phaeacian. I don't have any art of the Phaeacian yet, which is why I'm going to soon draw them in the gallery picture that I'm doing on right now. But Phaeacian are basically the insect race. So you have like insect people with multiple limbs, wings. Oh, give me a second. I need to check something real quick. At the door. Right, so Phaeacians are like the bug people, and they sort of lived underground for the longest time until more of them started to come towards the surface, and the flavor behind them, or how you would expect them to look like, is I based a lot of it. It was inspired from like Hollow Knight, because I really enjoyed I really found the world building in that game really fascinating, so they sort of flavored around that aesthetic. So I hope maybe later I'll sort of jump straight to drawing the Sapients and sort of get a sense for what they look like. So next is the Voyager, and the Voyager are the undead race. So you have skeletons, zombies, and ghosts basically, and that sort of the lore behind them is that they also live underground, but it's sort of like in this realm where time kind of flows differently, so anyone who it's sort of impossible to die while in that realm. So if you die there, you end up just becoming a Voyager, which is sort of this undead type person. And that's like, they have like their own type of culture and worldview, because they have different sort of a different outlook on life, because obviously they are immortal, so they have different views on things compared to other Sapients. Yeah, I would say vampires kind of fall into the same category as well, because they have like a very kind of gothic dark fantasy flavor to them, based on like the reference I use. So I was also drawing a Voyager in that spread, so I can show that later. And then next is the Keen, and the Keen is basically like your short fantasy race, so like a goblin or a halfling or a gnome. They all sort of just kind of folded into one singular race, and also, but they actually take a lot of reference more from the Yordles from League of Legends, if you know that one. And the Yordles are also kind of a short race of this kind of gnome, halfling, goblin type people, and they are a bit more mysterious because they have like a very unusual origin. So the thing about like most of the Sapients here is that a lot of them were formerly human, meaning they were like evolved from humans over 1,000 years ago, because of magic and stuff like that. But the Keen are sort of different in that their origin is not directly human, so people are still trying to figure out what they are, and they have like certain affinity with luck and magic, so that's sort of the flavor behind them. And also, yeah, so there's like two subtypes, like the Magic King and the Wild King, which is sort of more towards like a goblin, but that's sort of basically the default small race. And then I think that's it for of what we have in the rulebook so far. But as for the, what else is there? Shirai Aslanti. Yeah, so what else is planned that I might probably add into the rulebook sooner or later. Okay, so this one is, so right now I'm drawing the Voyager here. This is the Voyager representative, which is sort of like this this noble, kind of like a noble type girl, who's like a zombie with like a giant sword sticking out of her stomach. It's just sort of stuck there. The Sapients is sort of this mantis girl, mantis assassin girl, which I'm still drawing. And the robot representative, I might change up his design, but it's just basically this giant robot dude, basically, with a floating head, floating around head. So that's sort of where they all are at now. After I finish Vesper over here, I could probably jump right into those other those other sapiens that I haven't touched on yet. So right now, let me go back to Vesper and finish it up. So how did I come up with the names for the sapiens? So Voyager was something that I worked on for quite a few number of years, at least 2 years, almost 3 maybe. And over time, I just sort of figured out a lot of the names. Mostly, I just looked through like Wikipedia and Google Translate, sort of like finding different names for words that are associated with the kind of vibe I want for the sapient, which of course sometimes it change over time. So like the Kaibi, which is the furry race, they used to be called the Feralis, because back then it was like more, back then Voyager was more clearly based on Ruby, so Feralis / Faunus, basically that was what they were. And it sort of encompassed, but back then Feralis sort of encompassed all animal people, which included the Ruaya and the Ocelati, which didn't have names back then. But after that, I changed it so that I started separating them into their own sapiens. So then I chose Kaibi, which I think was supposed to evoke the Japanese word kaibutsu, which I think means animal or something along those lines, or beast. So that's sort of that the reasoning behind that name, because the Kaibi in general are each sapien has kind of a culture that they sort of parallel. It's sort of like, you know, because this is like a post-apocalypse world, but post-apocalypse means like it's like been almost 1,000 years since the apocalypse already. But all of them sort of like are an evolved version of certain cultures, or kind of like influence from them. So the Kaibi are sort of like influence from like Japanese culture. The Ruaya, so the Ruaya are based culturally influenced from Southeast Asian cultures. So like Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and they are like a seafaring sapient, meaning they live and travel along waterways, rivers, because most of them can swim. And the Raya is actually just changed from the word buaya, which in Malaysia, which is where I'm from, buaya is the Malay word for crocodile. So I just changed one letter and we have the Raya, which are essentially the reptilian race. The Ocelati took quite a while. Before this, the Ocelati were called the Sorain, I believe. They were called the Sorain or the Sorani because it was just sort of like, you know, the word "saw." That's just that was what why they were called that way. But they didn't really have like a strong cultural identity. So in a previous version, I actually wrote out the bird people because I didn't really have enough lore details for them. I didn't really know what to do with them. I only knew that they were kind of nomadic in nature because they fly everywhere. It was only after sort of looking at the list of like what sort of cultures I haven't really touched on yet with the other sapiens, and then I realized, okay, we haven't really had like a parallel to Slavic cultures yet. So then I looked at which combination could work, and then I sort of settled on the bird people. So I sort of reworked the Sorani into the Ocelati, which is not an actual word. It's not an actual word, but it's just sort of like, I believe it's like one of I need to see my sources, but like just like one of the words for bird or feather or owl or something like that. I need to actually, I don't remember, but you know, it's a sort of very loosely based on Slavic cultures, because obviously it's like, you know, obviously there's like an alternate future where these sort of languages and cultures evolved to a point where they sort of only vaguely resemble some of these cultures. So you know, it's something that I don't want to like adhere too much to, but sort of more take inspiration from. Let's see. Yes, the true way of creating fancy names is with Google Translate and Wiktionary. Might ask why create two different sapiens for the plant people. So technically they are the same. Technically they are under the same umbrella, which is the Phytosapien. So I would actually, most people will still call them Phytosapiens in general. It's just that they both are different, mostly for gameplay reasons, because they both have a very different flavor to them. One is more of like a magic focused sub-race, and the other is more of a tanky guardian sub-race. There was actually meant to be a third Phytosapien type in an earlier version called the Weaver. And the Weaver, because the Magoi are sort of based more on like flowers, fruits, more sort of delicate plants, so to speak, and the Xylolith used to just be called the Guardian, and they were based more on trees and, you know, the more of the sturdiness of it. Weavers, which may eventually be a playable sapient eventually, once I get enough ideas for them, but Weavers are kind of like based more on vines, fungi, mushrooms, and they were like kind of the sneaky variant of the Phytosapien, and that's sort of like how the Phytosapiens sort of basically embody like the classic mage, rogue, fighter type archetypes, but right now the Weaver is not implemented yet, so that's sort of the story behind why there's two different Phytosapien types. Yeah, if you're like Letters over here and you've seen some of the older versions, you would definitely remember the Weavers, but I'm not sure when they would return. The Siurai are based on Welsh cultures, so Welsh, Irish, that kind of thing. I believe Siurai itself is like either Welsh or Gaelic, which means like let me look it up on Wiktionary real quick, because I literally just took the exact word. It means everlasting, eternal, enduring, from Old Irish. So that's sort of like the origin of the name for the Siurai, which are, and their language Avarach is based on Welsh as well. So that's sort of their main culture focus. Drakians do not have a set culture because they're sort of like the versatile race. They came from pieces of a comet called the Dragon Star that fell to Earth and split into 7 different fragments that fell to the Earth. So each of those 7 parts fell onto different places and different cultures, which is why the Drakian people in general do not have a set culture. They sort of take after the culture they were raised in. The Phaethian also don't really have a set culture yet, so they are a bit more, I guess, have a fantasy flavor to them, but and their language is also very different from human languages because they don't really communicate using human means. They communicate more like insects with like these pheromone trails that they leave on the ground. So so they don't really have like a strict cultural parallel. The VMore are based, so there's two VMore cultures, which is I forgot what they were called. I forgot what they're called, but one was like the French parallel and one was the German parallel. So VMore itself is sort of the name VMore itself is sort of like a bastardization of like just combining the French words for life and death together, so VA and more, or like, you know, just like sort of mashing them together. But there's like a German culture within the VMore as well, and those like two distinct cultures within that realm that they live in. Keen do not have a strict cultural parallel, neither do the other plant races. So that's sort of the cultural makeup of the Sapients here. So if you look at like the rule book itself, oops, that's too much zoomed in. 4, 5. If you like play, even like if you look at the PDF now, the playable PDF, it will give like different suggestions for how to name your character. So Keens have a certain naming structure based on the language they speak, which will then include like what language notes to take. So like if let's say the Shirai, they sort of take after Celtic languages like Welsh, Irish, and Gaelic, stuff like that. So that's how you would sort of name your characters after those cultures. But yeah, so that's sort of the makeup of the races here, which is why, since there's so much kind of, I think why a lot of people are fans of Voyager is, I think, largely because of the lore, and of course like the art, the presentation of it, I would assume. So I sort of decided, you know, to sort of focus more. I've been focusing a lot lately on like the gameplay aspects, like, you know, trying to rework the systems. But I think people, they don't mind the fact that I'm making such large sweeping changes to the gameplay, mostly because I think most people aren't really playing Voyager for the game. They're more so playing it for the world and the characters in it. So knowing that, I'm sort of focusing now on sort of the visual presentation, which is why I did like the adventure gallery thing yesterday, where we showed off all the artwork and the names and descriptions of the playable classes in the game, which all also are associated with like certain faction in the world. And now we're gonna do like this gigantic one big drawing showing off all the Sapients of the world as well. So really sort of since, you know, I don't actually have like a good idea of how balanced or well crafted the game is, but I do at least have a better sense of how good I can make it look. So which I think, you know, if you know like Break RPG, it's like one of those, it's a Kickstarter tabletop RPG, and that sold really well, simply because the way the world was presented and the way the world is presented and how it showed off its lore and races was very, very well done. In fact, I could probably show it, just quickly scroll through it just to sort of show you guys, because they did have they concluded their Kickstarter a while back. It got like funded within like a single day, I think. It went really well for them. let me switch my scene. If I pull up the browser, if it detects it, right, so if I pull up this PDF, which is basically downloadable on their main website, which is breakrpg.com, you can see that the visual presentation of Break RPG is top notch in terms of like how the book is formatted. Everything is sort of divided into nice bite-sized chunks, and it's all like made by just two people. So one which is the writer, and the other which is the artist, who basically draws all the art for the book, which of course I greatly admire and respect about how well it's done, which I'm also of course taking some inspiration from in terms of just how well the book is formatted and how I could sort of add more visual elements to the Voyager rulebook over time, because Break RPG has been in development for a very long time. I think at least 3 to 5 years or even longer than that. So of course it's not directly comparable to Voyager, but Voyager has also been in development for quite a while. But Break just generally has very good visual presentation, which I think is why it is as successful as it is. So knowing that, that's also kind of where my strength lies with like visuals and more towards like the lore of the world. And of course, unfortunately, the fact that there are like not really that many play testers for Voyager Tactics as the game itself. I hope to use the art and the visual presentation to hopefully draw in more players to the game so that we can actually get it play tested more rigorously. Because Cloudbreaker Alliance also has a solid presentation, which let me pull up their Cloudbreaker Alliance is another Kickstarter RPG that got funded a while back. And why I bring this up is because Break and Cloudbreaker, when I actually like looked up like their world and how they're presenting it, it was very, very like similar to Voyager, almost concerningly so. Like I was kind of worried like, oh, if I release Voyager eventually, people might say like, why did you copy this from that, or why is it so similar? Because in Break's case, there were even like a few terms that were very, very similar. But looking at the inspirations and reference that these creators cited for Break and Cloudbreaker is definitely not quite the same, because both Break and Cloudbreaker, while they both have this sort of anime aesthetic to them, which has a lot of focus on the visual presentation of their RPG, they are both more clearly fantasy focused, so more like typical Final Fantasy type world for both of them. So they are very and they were more inspired from like older types of media. So Break was more inspired from like Labyrinth Lord, which I don't actually know what that is, but it is, I think, more towards like that older D&D era, and from stuff like I'm not sure, but sort of like older franchises like Legend of Zelda and stuff like that. And Cloudbreaker is also sort of based more on older media, older as in older franchises like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. But I think what will set Voyager apart is it kind of has a more modern approach to it. Not say modern is better or anything, but just modern is different, because Break and Cloudbreaker, I think they have kind of this sort of retro feel to them, which I think older RPG players would like, because it sort of like evokes like certain nostalgic memories of like certain anime media or D&D-esque media that they would like. Whereas my design goals for Voyager was more so to appeal to new players, because I myself only really entered the tabletop gaming hobby very recently, like only a few years ago. And of course I started with 5th edition like most people, but because I have that perspective as like a new player, a newcomer to the tabletop space, that I wanted to design an RPG that reflected my kind of preferences towards that as well, which is sort of informs a lot of the design decisions, not only for Voyager's world but also the gameplay, meaning that Voyager is supposed to not have a lot of numbers involved, meaning like character sheet tracking like your modifiers and your items and stuff like that. It's supposed to be very very sort of light in that regard, but more crunchy in terms of abilities and what you can do in combat. In terms of the world building, Voyager is also more clearly inspired from more modern franchises, so stuff like Arknights I keep citing as a reference, Ruby as well. So these are clearly way more recent franchises that only came out around the 2010s. So obviously being referenced and inspired from these more recent properties that have Voyager also has these traits, because obviously from like the characters and stuff that are shown, Voyager has a more clearly sci-fi flavor to it, or more like a sci-fi plus fantasy flavor. So like what you expect from Ruby or from Arknights or from Destiny as well is another reference I use. So whereas these other games that are similar to Voyager have more of the clearly medieval fantasy direction, I think what is still kind of lacking in the tabletop scene, which is why I kind of made Voyager in the first place, is that I noticed there wasn't really a sort of tabletop game that had like a more kind of sci-fi fantasy aesthetic with like where you actually mix things like guns and swords together, and not just guns as in like rifles or blunderbusses or like the more those kind of industrial era guns, but more like really actual sci-fi concepts like jetpacks and robots in like a sort of fusion type world. And until now I've still not really seen that in a tabletop RPG that also had an anime aesthetic, which is why I'm even more confident now looking at these recent RPGs that came out like Cloudbreaker and Break, that Voyager still has a niche that it can fill, which I think is why I think it still has the fans that it does. People who watch the streams and who join the server and interested in the playtest, is because if I were to guess why it has the traction it does, is because it sort of still fills that niche that some of these other games haven't really filled yet. So if I were to be more entrepreneurial about it, I think I should at least hurry up and try to get version 1.0 done as soon as possible, because I think eventually someone is going to have the same idea as me, or someone already had the same idea and is working on that same game type or to fill that same market niche. And when that comes out, then that's gonna be tougher for me to sell Voyager. So I will have to, and of course I really enjoy the world as well, and it's been crafted over quite a long time. So it is something that I want to put out in a final state eventually, or as soon as I can. Especially since, because you know, after like all my Ruby stuff and all that, it's kind of, I want to make it sort of like it's really sort of my first fully original world that I can really like put out and show the world. So, but of course, numbers wise, I don't have the same pull as because Cardbreaker was made by also a YouTuber with a far larger audience, because he's been making tabletop content for a very long time. That's sort of what his channel is about. And Break was also Break sort of just appeared out of nowhere, but it's already been in development for a long time, and it's sort of been updated through like blogs and stuff like that. So in terms of just making a splash, Voyager may not reach as many people as these other games, but which is not something I'm overly concerned with, but I hope to at least try to take whatever steps I can to make sure number one, that the game is as solid as possible, because I don't just want to sell people on the world, I want to sell them on like a solid gameplay experience. And then also to secondly, to sort of make sure that I sort of present it in its best possible state by the time version 1.0 comes out, which is why I'm sort of adding all these extra illustrations and visual guides, so that people really can it's a lot easier for people to understand and get into the world. But yeah, you gave the VMware NPC in the Voyager game your GMing an Italian name instead of French or German. Yeah, Italian is kind of more towards the Centenarium area, which is it's another human area, but the Adians are just like kind of English, I guess, since they all yeah, they're kind of like the English basically, but they do have like the Vineland, which is another region to the north, which is sort of Italian, because that's where the Centenarium city is. Yeah, and of course, yeah, the Venture Gallery does feel very gacha character screen, because that was sort of what I was designing it after, and of course I take a lot of reference from gacha games as well. But yeah, hopefully once I get enough out and balance the game, and even like commission more artists that will contribute to the world, I hope to ship out Voyager in a sort of finished state. And that discussion ended up going a bit longer than I thought, so maybe I will finish Vesper a bit later and sort of move to maybe one of the less known Sapients. So maybe I'll do the Phaesian girl, because I was sort of already sort of trying to figure out how to draw her. So this is like the bug girl basically, but she's sort of like the assassin. This representative is sort of like a assassin bug girl basically. So I'm trying to figure out how to design the look, because some of them can look more like insects with the actual insect heads, but I do kind of want a semi-stylized look for some of them as well, so that they don't look entirely insectoid, because that's not exactly the cutest thing to look at. But something like, so I was thinking something more like what you would see from like you know, like a Spider-Man costume where they have like the big eyes and no mouth. But instead of a mask, it's sort of like their actual face. So even like Hollow Knight kind of does this as well with like the masks that they wear. So that's kind of like the aesthetic that I'm going with for the Sapient. As a Brazilian, I know I gotta ask, how's the Brazil territory in the setting? I'm not sure. Mostly because I honestly don't know enough about like South American culture in general. Even though I have interacted like this other artist server I'm on, a lot of them are like from Latin America, or they're Spanish, or, and of course they're not the same thing, but like from these sort of areas, and I'm sort of figuring out where I could have like a niche for that, because that I think at the time that I made the Oshilati, I was sort of considering what unexplored cultures were there, and one of the considered ones was like the South American cultures, which it used to be that the Voyager had elements of them, but because like Voyager did have some elements of them, but after reworking them a bit more, now they're just more fully based on Southeast Asian cultures. But at the moment, I have not found a race that could fit that. Although maybe because some of the ones that don't have like a strict cultural parallel yet. So the ones like the Keen, the robot race, the slime race, and what am I missing? The Sapient also don't have like strict cultural. So I could perhaps look into one of those Sapients to more closely reflect those cultures. I'm probably thinking of the Keen perhaps could be considered, because the Keen have they have a very community focused culture, because from what few lore snippets that I made of them, they have a very family based culture centered around because like I said before, that they're not born, they have to be like, each new Keen has to be made, so a lot of it is sort of like the community coming together to create a new individual. So I think having elements of that combined with Latin American culture could actually work. I can consider in the future as I work more on that Sapient. But right now I'm gonna keep working on the facing girl, and then I'll probably end the stream because it ended up going a bit longer than I thought, and we barely made any progress with the rest of them. So this will take a long time, and I'll probably work on it a lot more like off stream. So here, so I do want to insert her antennae somewhere. Either they're gonna be peeking out of a hood like this, so almost like hair, or it'll be like from like a hole in the back of the hood, so it'll be more like this. Actually that probably looks better, or if it moves kind of like forward. I like the one that goes backwards, so maybe I'll do that for now. Although this type of antenna, they do kind of have like a more of an alien look to it. I might should like look up more insect types. Insect antennae. Oh, okay, I didn't shift the scene yet. Right. So, right, so there's quite a lot of different types actually. Some of them have, right, so they actually won't be separated like this. For some of them, it will more be like coming from like the same point, so almost like a V shape. I actually like that more. Yeah, I kind of like that it peeks out of the hood also. So we'll go with this shape for now. So with her, she's also sort of meant to be a mantis girl. So she has multiple arms, and one set of arms is these mantis claws. So here she is taking like a meditative stance. Get the perspective correct. Doing like a meditative pose. So sort of like a ninja assassin bug girl, and then what I imagined was that her mantis claws would sort of be to her sides. So let me just look it up real quick. Right, so it's sort of like let's see. So figure out what kind of pose the claws can take. Yeah, something like this, and then she probably like have like a sharpened end to the point, so that he uses it doing like assassinations and stuff like that. Be quite a cool character idea. So I'm gonna use her as the representative for the assassin venture as well, because I don't have a illustration for that venture yet. Which means I'll give her like a mask or something. Or I could pattern it so that the mask looks like mandibles. So she'll be wearing a mask, but the mask is sort of shaped in a way to resemble mandibles, so you can't actually tell whether it is a mask or it is an actual face. That's what I'm thinking. So be like this, and to look up some more insect faces. I'm a bit unfamiliar in that territory. So like this. Something like this, I guess. I give her pupils or not? Just giving her pupils does give her a bit more personality. Let's see. What are you pause champing about? What is so... That's not the pause champ about. I'm sure. Do something a bit more with it. Because right now she kind of looks fully bug-like, but I kind of want to make it seem a bit more. Kind of want to make it a bit more ambiguous, because a lot of these other sapiens, they kind of have more like human appearances to them, so I kind of want to have that as well. Maybe she doesn't need the antenna. Maybe the antenna could be shorter. So I kind of want to do something with her design that is sort of ambiguous. What parts of her are actually her biology and what parts of her are more like part of her costume. So let's say if I give her like these Oni horns, are they like part of her costume, or are they actually like sort of horns due to her biology? Or something like that. Then maybe I could change the mask design. Try the Hollow Knight approach and just have it be like two big eye holes. That certainly gives like a more mysterious look. So I do like, for some of these more fantastical characters, like giving them like these black sclera with the eyes standing out. Because I did this for like the Oshlati guy as well. But this basically like this owl guy, so he has like this sort of same thing. It looks quite cool. Not sure if I do this with this one. I might keep it so that I'll play around the design a bit more, but I might change the mask design and probably give her pupils. Maybe I want to change how the eyes look, give them a bit more of a distinct shape. Insect. So of course insects are known for having compound eyes, but I don't think I'm gonna do the same here necessarily. Maybe something that sort of stylistically resembles compound eyes. So how I do it is maybe square eyes, or what I could do is maybe illustrate the compound eyes by having multiple circles. So multiple compound eyes. If I do actual compound eyes, is it gonna look a bit too insectoid for my liking? I kind of want to have it a bit more humanoid appearance, but sort of balancing it is sort of trying to figure out how to actually balance having a look kind of relatively humanoid-ish. So I'll give it kind of regular human pupils for now until I figure it out. But yeah, so let's try to finish up the rest of a general body shape. Generally should have like a kind of ninja outfit. Yeah, mantis eyes do look like they have pupils. It's kind of like, those are more like black pupils, let's say. I guess if I gave them black pupils, and then give the little, it just kind of look like a cartoon eye. It actually gives it kind of an oddly cute appearance. That's not bad actually. Kind of, it's like this kind of very serious looking ninja character, but then she has kind of like these beady eyes. It's not bad actually. Oh yeah, I do know of Juniper. I think there's like, I know there's like at least 2 different moss VTubers. I believe there were 2, or either that or it's the same VTuber but she changed the model. But there's quite a few moss characters. Moss characters are quite popular actually in terms of as far as insect girls go. But for her, I want to make her more of a mantis girl type. So do this. Give her boobs per se, but just sort of more the shape of the chassis, the thorax rather. Okay. Kind of, so far she's fitting the ninja look. I do wanna give a bit of a modern aesthetic so it doesn't look too fantasy, like 100%. Try to look into it. Should I draw kneeling or standing? Standing, I have to adjust the pose. Yeah, maybe standing might be better. It looks more confident. Let me just get the robot guy out of the way. Clear view. Slightly unusual proportions because of the fact it's like a insectoid type body. So then even she would probably have like the segmented legs as well. If I were to interpret that, it would kind of be like digitrade legs, so kind of like maybe like this perhaps. I want to stylize it somewhat. We need a hood. Put a hood down. Might have a more interesting silhouette if I draw her whole head. Debating whether she should have hair or not. Would it be too humanoid for her to have like human hair? So I'll figure that out. If I had to stylize it, I don't know if there's any bug elements that kind of resemble hair. Because for like the Phytosapien, their hair is like leaves and stuff. I don't know if bugs have kind of like an equivalent that I can use. Probably not. I'll figure it out after the stream, I think. Proportions are a bit off. Would be lower. Bugs do have fuzz on them, like bees and beetles. Yeah, they do technically. Yeah, I guess that's why moth gulls are pretty popular, because they're kind of fluffy, so they kind of have that. You're more easily able to like anthropomorphize them. Let me look it up right now, like what other people have done for like, so moth girls in general. Yeah, if we were to look at pictures of like anime moth girls and such, they do have hair. It's just that they have like the little moth antennae coming out of their heads and unusual eyes, normally like sort of fully black eyes, and wings and multiple limbs. So in terms of just like anthropomorphization, I see that most artists don't have a problem giving hair to the insect people. So I think I should be fine giving her hair as well. As for what that hairstyle actually is, I'll have to figure it out. I'll have to figure it out after. So near the end of stream time. Perhaps like this. Perhaps like this becomes more like a kung fu martial artist type vibe. Let's think of it. I'll think about it. As for the design, let me see if I can pull up some of these designs real quick so we can figure out what to draw for her. Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of Kiriko, like the kind of modern techwear type look. Trying to see if there's other references I can use. So if I were to take this, jacket and petal approach for an orchid mantis aesthetic. I could. Yeah, those have like the kind of flower shapes, which might work. Interpret that, it'd probably be like more petal shaped, I guess. Let me do the outfit first. So I'm thinking kind of want like a ninja outfit. So here. Looking too medieval fantasy looking, so give her a bit more modern looking pants, I'd say. Of course, the insect legs. Instead of that, for like a jacket. Plate. Maybe I'll try sitting down after all. Sort of, it's doing like a squat. Asian squat. The Asian squat is, well, the legs are raised higher. The Asian squat is like this. Oops. Right. A bit too small. Size up. Eyebrows make it more humanoid looking, so it gets a bit more of a relatable appearance. I think I've got the general shape of it down, so I want to start moving on to another character because I wanted to just really quickly also work on the VMore girl, and that'll be the last one before I end the stream. VMore girl is sort of like a zombie girl. The dress. So she's definitely more like a wearing gothic style clothing. I have some reference for it I need to look back at. So let's see. Yeah, something like this. So kind of like Ollie. She has some elements of Ollie and some of like Gwen from League of Legends as well. Sort of like it's also kind of like that undead realm, just the Shadow Isles. One sort of like have this. Changed my mind about it. So want those big poofy drafts types outfits. Let's see. Draw legs first. Tail. change the pose. Dress more. Yeah, so finding the right shape for it. Let's go with the sword for now. Focus on the main shape of the body. That's why proportion's a bit off. Not done a lot of dresses before. Let me look at other weapons. So if I want to check here, from here and here. These are quite high-waisted. I think that's what I'm missing. Especially it would be the dress would start quite high up on the waist, around here perhaps. Then they'll start flaring out from there, I think. Seems alright. Probably need to play around her design a bit more. Because maybe the hairstyle doesn't fit the aesthetic. Maybe more wavy. The sword would be she might actually hold the sword as a weapon instead. have like I do want to copy like Ollie and have like another sword like sticking out of her head like this. This is a very funny mental image. It's like something like this perhaps. So I clearly influenced from that, I'd say. I'll probably workshop this a bit more, but I think I want to end the stream soon. So yeah, I think I'll conclude it here and work on this more off stream. So that should be it. So thank you guys. I'm glad I was also able to like explain the Sapients in more detail as well, with like all their cultural inspirations and what to do with them, and some possibly other future Sapients as well. So I think that'll be it. And yeah, it could replace the sword for rapier or like a different type of blade, so this is not like a direct copy, but I'll do that off stream. But thank you all for joining me in this stream. I think this would be the last Voyager stream this week at least. If I do stream again this week, I'll let you guys know, but there's other work I need to finish first, so probably not. But I'll see you next week. Next week might be more Voyager or might be more Project 1 stuff. It's been a while since I got back to that. But regardless, thank you all for joining me, and I will see you the next time. And if you want to, if you haven't already, then please join like the Voyager or the Switchback Tabletop server. That's where you can find all Voyager related news and info, and you can even go to my itch.io page where you can actually download the playtest document, the full PDF, so that you can actually read all the information and stuff regarding Voyager. So that'll be all. Thanks for joining me.